In 2017, Matt Lauer was one of the most trusted faces in America. Every morning, millions of people invited him into their homes. He had won countless awards, earned millions of dollars, and built an empire on the Today Show. Then, in a single day, it all disappeared. NBC fired him. His reputation shattered. But the real story of what happened after, how a man at the absolute peak of his career lost everything, has rarely been told. What actually became of Matt Lauer when the cameras stopped rolling? Matt Lauer didn't start as a household name. He grew up in New York, the son of a news director and a dancer. His childhood was comfortable but not extraordinary. He went to Ohio University, studied journalism, and worked his way up through small markets, places most people have never heard of. But he had something that mattered: ambition and an ability to connect with people on camera. By the 1980s, Lauer was climbing. He worked at local news stations, then moved to the national stage. In 1992, he joined NBC. At first, he was just another anchor fighting for attention in a crowded industry. But then something shifted. He got better. He became smoother. People responded to him differently. He had a gift for making serious topics feel accessible, and serious people feel comfortable. Then came his big break. In 1997, Matt Lauer became co-anchor of the Today Show. This wasn't just any job. The Today Show was an American institution. It was where presidents announced things. Where celebrities revealed secrets. Where America started its day. And suddenly, Matt Lauer was the person America woke up to. For 2 decades, he ruled morning television. He interviewed everyone: presidents, celebrities, world leaders. He covered major events. He made people laugh. He asked the right questions. Ratings climbed. His salary grew. By 2017, he was earning approximately $20 million per year. He owned a sprawling Hamptons estate worth $36 million. He was powerful, wealthy, and seemingly untouchable. But power, it turns out, can corrupt in ways nobody sees coming. In the fall of 2017, whispers began. Rumors circulated among NBC staff about inappropriate behavior. Women started talking to each other privately about uncomfortable moments. At first, it was quiet. Then it became impossible to ignore. NBC executives began an investigation. And what they found changed everything. But what happened next shocked the entire industry. On November 29, 2017, NBC made an announcement that stunned America. Matt Lauer was fired. Immediately. No 2 weeks' notice. No gradual exit. The company released a statement saying they had received a detailed complaint about inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace. NBC said the investigation had found a pattern of behavior that violated company policies. Lauer released his own statement. He apologized. He said some of his conduct had been inappropriate, but he denied some of the allegations. The apology felt hollow to many people. It acknowledged wrongdoing without fully explaining what he had done. It was, in a way, the worst kind of response, admitting enough to seem guilty but not enough to give people answers. The details emerged slowly. Multiple women came forward. Their stories painted a picture of someone who had used his power and position in ways that made colleagues deeply uncomfortable. Some allegations were about explicit behavior. Others were about verbal comments and unwanted advances. The specifics remained somewhat private, but the pattern was clear: Matt Lauer had crossed lines that should never be crossed. What shocked people most wasn't just the allegations themselves. It was the timing. This was November 2017, just weeks after Harvey Weinstein's crimes had been exposed. The entertainment industry was in upheaval. Women everywhere were finding courage to speak up about harassment and assault. And suddenly, one of the most visible, trusted men in media was being accused of similar behavior. The Today Show went on without him. Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb filled his seat. Within days, it was as if he had never existed. His office was cleaned out. His photos were removed from the building. Colleagues who had worked beside him for years suddenly wouldn't speak his name publicly. Social media erupted. Some people defended him. Others felt betrayed. Many women who had watched him for years said they felt sick, that they had trusted someone who, according to the allegations, hadn't deserved that trust. His legacy, built over decades, crumbled in hours. But nobody really knew what happened to him after that moment. The silence that followed was deafening. After November 29, 2017, Matt Lauer vanished from public life. Not completely, he wasn't in prison, and he wasn't hiding in a bunker. But he disappeared from the world that had known him. No interviews. No public appearances. No social media posts. For someone who had spent decades speaking to millions of people every single morning, the silence was profound. He retreated to his Hamptons estate. The massive property became his sanctuary and, in many ways, his prison. While other disgraced public figures eventually attempted comebacks or gave interviews, Lauer did something different. He stayed quiet. For years. This silence was strategic, his lawyers likely advised, but it also meant that the public narrative about him went completely unchallenged. He became a ghost in the machine of American pop culture. The financial impact was immediate and severe. NBC negotiated a severance deal, and while the exact amount remained confidential, reports suggested it was substantial, somewhere in the range of $20 to $25 million. To most people, this sounds like an enormous cushion. And it was. But it came with a price that money couldn't fully compensate for: irrelevance. Think about what that means. For 20 years, Matt Lauer had been needed. Producers needed him. Advertisers needed him. Viewers needed him. His opinion mattered. His presence commanded attention. Then suddenly, he wasn't needed by anyone. His phone stopped ringing. Invitations stopped coming. Friends, in many cases, stopped calling. His marriage, which had lasted since 1991, showed cracks under the pressure. In May 2018, just 6 months after his firing, his wife Annette Roque filed for divorce. She cited cruel and inhumane treatment. The specifics of their private struggles weren't fully public, but it was clear that the scandal had fractured something fundamental in their relationship. What had once looked like a stable family unit from the outside had been damaged beyond repair. He was no longer the trusted face of America. He was the cautionary tale. Late-night comedians made jokes about him. True crime podcasts discussed his case. Think pieces were written about power and accountability. And through it all, he said nothing. Yet something else was happening behind closed doors. What many people didn't realize during those silent years was that Matt Lauer was still living. He wasn't isolated completely. He had family. He had money. He had time, something most people never get after a public fall. And he used that time in ways that stayed hidden from public view. Reports from people close to him suggested he spent significant time at his various properties. Beyond the Hamptons estate, he owned land in the Sag Harbor area and maintained other residences. He focused on his children, his 2 sons from his marriage to Annette and his daughter from a previous relationship. Friends who spoke anonymously said he was trying to be a present father, perhaps more than he had been when his career demanded constant attention. He also began a quieter life. No more red carpets. No more industry events. Instead, he took up activities that kept him grounded and away from cameras. He spent time on his properties, invested in real estate, and reportedly worked on personal projects that would never make headlines. For someone accustomed to constant validation and public recognition, this represented a complete psychological shift. The financial settlement from NBC provided security, but it also created a strange limbo. He had enough money to live comfortably forever, yet he couldn't work in the industry that had defined him for nearly 40 years. Television networks wouldn't touch him. Major media companies blacklisted him. Any company that hired him would face immediate backlash and boycott threats. He was financially secure but professionally dead. Some reports suggested he explored opportunities outside traditional media. Podcast appearances were pitched to him, he declined. Book deals were offered, he turned them down. It was as if he had made a conscious decision that any attempt to rebuild his public image would only invite more scrutiny, more anger, more pain. Better to disappear entirely than to face the fire again. His children grew up with a father who was infamous but absent from their world. They didn't see him on television. They didn't experience the version of him that millions knew. They knew a different Matt Lauer, the one dealing with consequences, the one stripped of power, the one learning what it meant to be ordinary. But after years of silence, something unexpected began to shift. By 2021 and 2022, more than 3 years had passed since Matt Lauer's fall. The initial shock had faded from the news cycle. New scandals had emerged. The world had moved on to other outrages. And in that quieter moment, Matt Lauer began to emerge, carefully, cautiously, from complete silence. He didn't do a grand interview or write a tell-all book. Instead, his re-emergence was subtle. In 2021, he was spotted at public events in the Hamptons. He attended charity functions. He was seen at restaurants. He was still recognizable, still infamous, but he was attempting to reclaim some version of a normal life in the community where he had retreated. More significantly, he began working behind the scenes in media again. Not as an on-air personality, that door remained firmly closed. But reports suggested he was consulting on projects, advising younger journalists, and staying connected to the industry he had left behind. It wasn't redemption exactly, but it was a small step toward relevance. His relationship with his children appeared to deepen. His youngest son graduated from high school. His other children moved forward with their own lives. And by most accounts, he was a present, engaged father, something that hadn't always been possible when he was working 80-hour weeks on the Today Show. There was a bitter irony in this. He had lost everything, but in losing it, he had gained something he might have overlooked before. Before we continue, do you think people who have committed wrongdoing should have opportunities to rebuild their lives, or does public scandal mean permanent exile? The question is more complicated than it seems. Let me know in the comments what you think. The legal aftermath continued to evolve. In 2022, several women who had accused him of sexual harassment sued him in civil court. These weren't criminal cases, no charges were ever filed against Lauer, but civil lawsuits seeking damages. The cases remained largely confidential, but they indicated that the legal reckoning was far from over. Money settled some suits. Others dragged on. The legal system, it seemed, moved much more slowly than the court of public opinion had. He also faced a reckoning in his personal life. His marriage had ended. His reputation was permanently altered. The man who had been trusted by millions couldn't simply erase what had happened or pretend it didn't matter. But then, unexpectedly, he attempted something bolder. As of 2024 and 2025, Matt Lauer exists in a strange limbo that few people fully understand. He is not in jail. He is not working on television. He is not a complete unknown, but he is no longer a household name either. He is, in many ways, a ghost of his former self, present but invisible, wealthy but professionally irrelevant. Reports from 2023 and 2024 suggested he had attempted to move forward with his life in concrete ways. He focused on real estate ventures and investments that kept him financially secure without requiring public visibility. He spent time with his children and attempted to rebuild relationships damaged by years of scandal and shame. He remained in the Hamptons, in the community where he had sought refuge, building a quieter existence away from the spotlight. The question of whether he has truly changed remains unanswered. He has given no major interviews explaining his side of events. He has not written a memoir or attempted to rehabilitate his image through a carefully orchestrated public relations campaign. Some people view this silence as appropriate humility. Others see it as avoidance. The truth is probably more complex than either interpretation. What is clear is that Matt Lauer's life after the scandal is fundamentally different from the one he lived before. He will never return to morning television. He will never again be the trusted voice America wakes up to. That chapter of his life ended definitively in November 2017. Whatever life he builds now will be built in the shadows of what he lost and what he did. If you're enjoying stories that reveal what really happened behind the headlines and explore the complicated aftermath of public downfalls, make sure you subscribe because the next story on this channel explores another scandal that changed an entire industry forever, and the person at the center of it took a completely different path than Matt Lauer. His ex-wife Annette Roque moved forward with her own life. His children grew up understanding that their father was a complicated man who had made serious mistakes. The Today Show continued without him, as if he had never existed. And America moved on to the next scandal, the next controversy, the next person to condemn. Yet Matt Lauer's story remains incomplete. He is still alive. He is still processing what happened. He is still a man trying to figure out who he is when the world has decided who he isn't. Many people watching have gone through moments where their entire world changed in a single day, where one mistake or one moment of poor judgment shifted everything forever. If you've ever faced something similar, if you've ever felt the weight of consequences that seem to outweigh the offense, you're not alone. That's the reality of living in a world where accountability is swift and forgiveness is rare. The final truth about Matt Lauer is this: we may never fully know what happened inside his mind during those silent years. We may never understand the full extent of his remorse or his resistance. We may never know if he has genuinely changed or if he is simply waiting for the world to forget. What we do know is that his story is a cautionary tale about power, about the consequences of abusing trust, and about what happens when someone falls from the absolute peak of success. But this story isn't the only mystery that remained unsolved in the world of television news. The next story on this channel reveals something even more surprising, a scandal that unfolded in real time, on camera, and changed everything we thought we knew about another trusted news anchor.